friends, welcome to another episode of this lecture series. I'm Farsana and this is a Solutions for UGC NET English. Today I am going to talk about the second greatest poet of English history. It's none other than Spenser. And of course the first one is Chaucer. When we think of his personal life, a little was known. He was born in 1552 in London and spent his youth around politics and religion during the time of Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary. He was graduated from Cambridge, and once he graduated, he settled in North England as a tutor for a short period of time. From there, he had an unsuccessful love affair with a girl named Rosalind, which was he celebrated in his poem Rosalind. And after all this, he returned to London and stayed with Philip Sidney. With the help of Sidney, he became the secretary of Lord Grey Wilton, and later he became Queen's deputy in Ireland. And for Ireland, it was a time of struggle for religious and civil rights. They were against the Reformation movement, and because of this reason, after English army was sailed to Ireland to crush this rebellion, and Spenser also accompanied Lord Grey Wilton to Ireland, and he was blind towards all the atrocities that happened in that rebellion, and his only concern was to get some estate or some properties which was captured from the Irish landlords or Irish people. And once this rebellion ended, he got the Kilcolman castle of Kilcolman, and of course 3,000 acres of land. The writer Relic was also with him, and he won about 40,000 acres of land, and they became landlords in Ireland, and then they settled there. After a short period of time, they longed to return to England and to enjoy the society of London. But there was a problem, because when they became the landlords in Ireland, there was an agreement that they have to live in that castles or in that estate itself. And because of this reason, they cannot travel to England. And in that place or from Ireland, he started writing his masterpiece, that is Fairy Queen. And he published this first volume of 3 books in 1590, and later the next 3 books in 1596. And this first publication of this Fairy Queen wins a really good fame for him. And he tried to return to England using this success, and also with the help of some relations or with the help of his patrons. But Queen didn't allow his return, and he forced him to spend his life there. And after some time, there was a rebellion emerged, and in that rebellion, Kilcolman Castle was burnt, and he and his family was barely escaped. And Ben Jonson said that one of Spenser's children and a portion of Fairy Queen was perished in that fire. And after a short period of time, in 1599, he died, and he was buried next to Chaucer in Westminster Abbey. This is his personal life. When we look into the literary career of Spenser, we can divide his poems conveniently into 3 sections. The first one is the pastoral poems of Shepherd's Calendar, which reflect the poetical fashion of that period. And the second section or the second group is the allegorical poems of Fairy Queen, which reflect the life of England at that time, and of course the struggle between good and evil. And the third category is the occasional poems of friendship and love. These are the 3 categories of his poem. And now we can look into the first poem, that is Shepherd's Calendar, which was published in 1579. It was dedicated to Philip Sidney, and it's one of his famous poems which announced that finally a successor to Chaucer had emerged in England. That much famous this poem is. And this poetry collection includes 12 poems. Each poem represents each month of an year. And these poems were in the form of a conversation with music and dancing of shepherds. And at that time, it was a fashion among the Italian poets to write pastoral poems on the life of shepherds, their dancing, their piping, their love-making, except their actual business. So, our writer Spencer followed this trend and he wrote Shepherd's Calendar. Even he wrote this as a form of conversation and life of shepherds. It has different themes. Each poem has different themes, like the unsuccessful love of Colin and Rosalind. Colin is Spencer itself, and then praise of Elizabeth and Puritan theology, then trial and disappointment of one poet, and so on. So many other themes. Even these poems are in the form of conversation. The first and the last poems were complaints of Colin. Colin is Spencer. And this is about this Shepherd's Calendar, this particular work, Shepherd's Calendar. Sorry, I forgot one thing. That is, the major characters were Cuddy, Hubinol and Dickon. And there is some other shepherds also. So this is about this poem, Shepherd's Calendar. And the next poem is Fairy Queen. Fairy Queen was published in 1590. In the beginning it was published, first time it was published in 1590. At that time he published 3 books of Fairy Queen. And later in 1596 he published 3 more books, altogether 6 books. And his professed object of writing these poems is to use poetry for the moral studies, for the service of morality. According to the philosophy, there is 12 virtues, and his plan was to write 12 books, but we have only 6. And some portions of Fairy Queen is burnt in that Kilcolman Castle burn, and I already told you that. And in this 6 books, he celebrated 6 virtues. And the first virtue is holiness. Holiness is the first virtue, and which was celebrated through Red Cross Night. And the second virtue is temperance, which was celebrated with Sir Guyon. And the third one is Britomartis or chastity. Britomartis or chastity. And the third virtue is friendship, which was celebrated through Campbell and Triamont. They are the characters, Campbell and Triamont. And Sir Article stands for justice and Sir Calidor for courtesy. These are the 6 virtues and 6 characters he used to celebrate these virtues. So this is about this poem, Fairy Queen. And the last category is his occasional poems of friendship and love. So when we think of his occasional poems, we have the poems like Astrophel, Amorethy, Prothalmion, Epithalmion, and so on. This Astrophel is a pastoral elegy written on the death of Philip Sidney. I already told you this Shepherd's Calendar was dedicated to Philip Sidney, and now this Astrophel was written for Sidney. Then this Amorethy. Amorethy was a kind of a group of sonnets which was written in honor of his wife, an Irish girl named Elizabeth. So this is about his writings, and once Charles Lamb called him poet's poet, and Milton represented him as sage and serious writer, and of course Milton was one of the first to call him master of poetry, and he is the poet painter of Renaissance. He is known as poet painter of Renaissance, and of course this poet's poet. So this is about Spenser.